Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I would like to take you on a tour of classes in Lost Ark, the 15 that we're getting, and tell you a little bit about each of them in the hopes that I will help you choose which class or classes you're going to get to 50, play them a bit and then decide on a main. In case you're new to Lost Ark, welcome. It's really nice to have you. Very nice of you to give the game a try. And in case this is the first time you're watching me, nice to meet you also. My nickname is Saivo and I upload videos here on my YouTube channel. I also stream here. I have a video podcast with other content creators also here. So I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, let's get into the classes. First, a few things about them. There are 15 on day 1 with many more to come in the following months. 22 total classes currently in the oldest region and more already announced to come this year. Each of these classes can finish all of the content in game. Very important to remember. And your choice should be mainly based on the style of the class. However, I'd be lying if I tell you that's the only thing you should consider. Some content comes with various mechanics that can sometimes make it easier for a ranged class than a melee class, at least during the learning period. Some other content might make it difficult to be at the back, so classes that depend on that to perform might have a harder time doing so. We here in the West are blessed and cursed at the same time. Blessed because we have an up-to-date balance patch, and also blessed because 2022 is going to be the year when the devs focus on getting all of the classes as viable as possible in comparison to each other. So big changes are coming this year and it won't be long before we also get them. At the same time, there is a sense of urgency in choosing your main, as it will be harder to change your initial choice the more you progress with your gear, at least until level boosts with gear score come about, at which point it wouldn't be an issue anymore. So a good time to decide is before you start spending materials, gold and time at end game. You can get several to level 50 and play them a few days, one by leveling it manually, another one by using the knowledge transfer, maybe a third in case you're still conflicted by using the free level 50 pass that was recently revealed by our community manager. Now, let's get into the classes. I will start with Paladin and Bard together, so please forgive me, DPS Paladin mains, because they are the support classes in the game and each of them are a fantastic addition to any group in any content. You will feel the impact of a support class later on in the game, not only because content gets a bit more challenging, but also because you yourself as a DPS player will actually play a lot better and feel a lot more. On top of that, you having perfect stats or engravings further emphasizes the need of a support in your group to make you really explode. A few differences in between Bard and Paladin is the fact that Paladin gives more offense to a group, while Bard gives more defensive things. My opinion is that Paladin is also a bit harder to play than the Bard due to the telegraphs. You will need to place correctly, and the overall heavier, more, let's say, hiccupy kind of gameplay compared to a Bard. Pick any of these based on their gameplay and aesthetics if you're willing to support and be the most wanted class in any content that matters. As for PvP content, both the Bard and the Paladin are as amazing as they are in PvE, and because of that, they have the realistic opportunity to climb to even the highest PvP rank, and they often do. You often see supports there because they are actually that good for a group in PvP, especially in higher PvP tiers. They become even more useful when people know how to take advantage of them. Moving on to DPS classes, warriors first. Berserker is a warrior type class that wields a 200 greatsword, does very nice DPS with great visuals and sounds to top it all off. Always welcomed in a group because it's not really that hard to play, as the class is pretty straightforward in terms of skill casting, and even though it prefers to be at the back, it's not the biggest deal if you aren't there all the time, so quite forgiving in that sense. Berserker's party buff is a 12% increase in damage on the target. So play a Berserker if you enjoy that warrior feel from other MMOs that you might have played in the past. A Berserker in PvP content is a nice class definitely gonna be useful for you to climb the PvP ladders up to a certain point at which you might start to meet classes that are counters to you, or classes that are either have the range or the mobility as an advantage. So because of that, it's pretty hard to see a Berserker in the highest PvP rank. Gunlancer is a very nice class that is always welcomed in raids, can taunt bosses to interrupt mechanics, does a decent amount of damage but not as much as a DPS, however it's very tanky, plus provides a lot of nice group buffs, so the lack of their own DPS for being a tank in air quotes is very worth it. Target defense reduction, head and back attack bonuses for group mates, crit chance and shields too. Overall a fantastic class, assuming you enjoy the playstyle which is tankier, heavier feeling than other classes with a short backwards dash, etc. A Gunlancer in PvP content can do a very good job. Yes, it can climb to even the highest PvP tier, and in recent times it has actually seen a nice upwards trend, if I may. They have a very disruptive playstyle in terms of PvP. They deal with pulling the opponents away, empowering the teammates to do their thing, providing a shield, peeling very nicely for the teammates, and also doing some DPS themselves. Next, we dive into the gunner profession. Gunslinger first, a fantastic class at the moment with great DPS and range if needed. Sort of free of back or front attacks, it has the freedom to just destroy. Good mobility due to the nature of the class, and to add a cherry on the cake, it gives a crit chance buff to the party. So that's amazing. Play this class if you like a gunner and if you're okay with swapping weapons constantly. Gunslingers in PvP are doing a very nice job, and yes, you can see some of them in the highest PvP rank as well. Next is the Deadeye, the male version of the Gunslinger, which, even though it brings the same great party buff, 10% crit chance, it's a completely different experience. That's mostly because the class depends on shotguns, which in turn depend on being melee, and to add to that, being at the back of a boss is also a requirement. DPS is good, but it is harder to play than a Gunslinger, with not much rewards in return. Having this said, it's a very interesting class in general if you're looking for a challenge. Play this for the same reasons as the Gunslinger, only with more hurdles, let's say, to jump over. Deadeye in PvP is definitely an annoying class to play against, however, not in the best spot right now. So because of that, the class itself is not necessarily that popular, and you don't really see it in the highest PvP tiers. Next class is Artillerist, a heavy gunner with a big gun that can turn into a flamethrower and a machine gun, and you can also become yourself a turret. Any guy's wet dream. I main one simply because my mom told me to always chase my dreams. Having that said, the 6% increase in damage that you give to the party alongside the 20% increase stagger break is obviously not as juicy as attack speed or crit chance or even movement speed. And speaking of movement speed, it's a slow class as well, with just your dash to get you out of trouble, but you do have a nice self shield, which in crazy builds can even be shared with the group, and you also get a permanent 20% damage reduction from your class engraving. Damage is good if you land your stuff, because there is a chance that you won't, but it's not MVP good. Overall, play this class if you enjoy a slower, tankier gunner, great for soloing things too. An Artillerist can potentially do a good job in PvP, assuming you get a little bit lucky with your group composition, assuming you have played an Artillerist a long time so you can really understand the possibilities of the class and how it's useful and when you should do the things that you have at your disposal to do. So because of that, it's a rare sight when you see one in a higher PvP tier or in the highest PvP tier, but it is possible in theory. Everything's possible in theory with an Artillerist. Next one and the last class in the gunner profession is the Sharpshooter, the Ranger class in Lost Ark. Feels really nice to play, and it's an interesting take on the Ranger that you're used to. You won't need to worry about being at the back or in the front, and your party buff is a 6% increase in damage done to targets. Having that said, even though you have a good mobility, your biggest hitting skills will keep you in place for some time, and so good game knowledge is needed. You don't have a lot of stagger nor part break like other classes do, but you do get nice DPS at a lower entry point in terms of difficulty. Highly advise a Sharpshooter if you're into Rangers and you're willing to gear up a little bit before you really get the chance to shine. Sharpshooter in PvP can potentially be nice. It can get you to a high PvP tier, and I believe especially with our Western release, because there's going to be a lot of new players and Sharpshooter is going to be the only class that has hide, and hide in Lost Ark is quite annoying to deal with until you really understand it. I believe we will see some Sharpshooters here in the West placing pretty high. Going to the martial artist classes now, Wardancer first, a very fast-paced class, great sustained DPS as well, and overall a fast and exciting gameplay. Granted, at the beginning of the game, when you don't have so much agility, you're gonna need to auto-attack a lot, but that's gonna pass later on. What they bring to the party is exceptional. Attack speed, movement speed, and crit chance. What more could you want in Lost Ark, right? Me personally, as a player who mains slow classes such as Artillerist or Summoner, I love a Wardancer in my group as much as I love a Deathblade. Back attacks are important for a Wardancer, but not constantly. So positioning plays a role in your gameplay as well, but not the biggest role. Several builds are also possible for a Wardancer, so a bit more exciting in the customization department than other classes. Play this class if you're looking for a fast playstyle based on martial arts. Wardancer in PvP has seen quite a nice rise in recent months in terms of how well they can perform, and I'm pretty sure that here in the West there's gonna be quite some of them that are going to get to the highest PvP tier as well. Next is the Striker, the male version of a Wardancer, with some differences, one of them being the fact that they are heavily reliant on back attacks to keep up a great DPS number, making the gameplay a bit more challenging. Another difference is that they are a bit slower due to the way they build based on stats and class engravings. However, they bring the same amazing buffs to the party. Play this class for the same reasons as you would play a Wardancer, only a bit more hurdles to jump over, yeah. Scrapper, a well-rounded class in general that has an interesting gameplay. They have 2 dashes that can be used in different directions, by the way, thus making it very easy to avoid mechanics. They also don't have any mana, which is great for skill usage and being independent. Great for neutralization and parts breaks. Likes to be a little bit in front, a little bit at the back, but that shouldn't be that hard due to the good mobility that they have. They provide a 6% damage increase to the target from all party members. Play this class if you're looking for a more survivable melee martial artist class. In PvP, a Scrapper is fun, but seeing the class in the highest PvP tier is a rare sight. Moving on to Soul Fist, one of my favorite classes that I don't play, sort of a jack of all trades and a master of one at a time. Good mobility, fast animations in general. The group buff is increased attack power and reduced incoming damage, so it has a good synergy with other burst type classes during those quick moments of opportunity. Unfortunately, the better build relies on her awakening skill, which is the highest damage awakening skill in game, but has a chance to miss the target. And in general, it's a class that is a little bit harder to master. I recommend you try the class because I am personally in love with the Soul Master from a distance, and I also recommend you happily play it, but only if you really love it and feel a strong bond with it. Having all of that said, a Soul Fist is a very nice class for PvP content. It has almost always been either at the top or competing for the top, and it continues to be there. You can still see some Soul Fist players in the highest PvP rank even. So it's a class that's helpful in PvP, it's useful, you can play it to a very nice extent, very high skill ceiling it has as well, so definitely possible. Lastly, the assassin profession, starting with a Shadowhunter, a visually stupefying class. For me personally, right up there in the top 3, alongside the Summoner and the Berserker, in terms of visuals and sounds. Generally not hard to master and understand, with a party buff that increases the damage to the target by 12% for 6 seconds, but with a cooldown of 30 seconds, lower with agility, of course, right? And speaking of cooldowns, it feels that overall you're gonna wait for your skills as opposed to them waiting for you. Even so, good DPS overall, doesn't need the back or front either, so recommended for sure if you enjoy a badass, heavier feel assassin. Shadowhunter is in a good spot for PvP content, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be in an even better spot here in the West, because the class is going to be most likely very popular, and thus a large selection of players playing it means more talented players are going to pick it up in PvP as well, and it has all of the tools needed for you to get to even the highest PvP rank. Next class in the assassin profession is the Deathblade. Lighter, more agile feel to it, with the group buff being an almost permanent attack speed and movement speed, plus more damage to head and back attacks, so as amazing as a Wardancer, right, in terms of group buffs. Heavily reliant on back attacks makes the class harder to play, but very rewarding as it actually feels nice and is also agile, right? Recommend this as the closest thing you're gonna get to a fast sword-wielding type assassin class with great DPS and great party buffs as well. Deathblade is a very nice class for PvP content, and it's very often that you see Deathblade players placing in the top PvP rank, and I have no doubt that it's going to continue performing the same for us here in the West. And you thought I almost forgot the mages, didn't you? Well, I didn't. I left the Sorceress for last because we included Bard in their own SSS tier alongside the Paladin, so we only have the Sorceress now. The Lost Ark Mage class with super crazy DPS, quite many build customization options as both class engravings are good, and in general a feels great kinda class. Due to the variety in builds, you also have access to nice mobility from the innate skill, which can dash through bosses at that, so this is important. A party buff, the party buff is a 6% damage increase to the target, but even if they wouldn't have any party buff, they would still be wanted simply due to the high damage output that they have at the moment in this balance patch. Having that said, everything that's flying really high in Lost Ark will eventually be taken a notch down, but I doubt that there's ever gonna be a time when a Sorceress will be mediocre. Sorceress in PvP is in a good spot at the moment. Again, it kinda feels great to play overall PvE and PvP content, and I believe this great spot for Sorceress in PvP is going to show in our Western rankings as well. Play a Sorceress if you enjoy mages, if you don't mind the cast times, if you like bigger numbers on a squishier class, and with that, this was my overview on the 15 classes we're getting day one. The most important criteria in choosing a class is how much you enjoy that particular class. Even if some of the classes are speedier, thus you can get out of mechanics faster with them or more frequent, so they're gonna be better to learn some fights, and some other classes are tankier, so you can just face tank some mechanics and thus get through content. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter unless you really enjoy the gameplay of that class. And classes in Lost Ark are content of its own, so trying several is encouraged by the game. It's also good to do, and it's mega fun. Enjoying a class is much more valuable than feeling like an attack speed bot in your raid group, right? Especially because 2022, as I mentioned at the beginning, is going to be the year of class rework, and they're not just gonna fine-tune the classes to, increase their damage output for all to be the same. They're also going to change skills from the ground up, and that's going to bring a whole new complexity and idea over the classes that we have in the game. Plus, not to mention that the way people put groups together in Lost Ark is based more on the chemistry in between those groups, and every class sort of fits in a specific kind of group, right? And the second thing they look at is yourself, your account. Is it well taken care of? Do you have nicely taken care of stats? Do you have decent engravings? Can you show that you've played this game and you can succeed in the mechanics, not kill everyone, right? So I hope that this guide has given you the basics in terms of what you can expect from each class, what each class gives to the group, how does it feel to play them. And yeah, I wish you good luck in your choice, and I thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.